Lily Carter had always been curious. At just 17 years old, she was one of the youngest members of the exploration team sent to study a distant planet, covered in thick forests and strange wildlife. The mission was simple: gather information about the environment, assess whether it could support human life, and return home with their findings. But nothing about this planet felt simple. The air smelled different here, earthy and metallic. At the same time, the trees were enormous, their trunks wider than any building Lily had ever seen back on Earth. Strange plants glowed faintly in the dim light, casting eerie shadows on the forest floor. Every step revealed something new, something alien. It was both thrilling and terrifying. On her third day on the planet, Lily wandered away from the group. She didn't mean to stray too far. She just wanted a moment alone to take it all in. Her teammates were nice enough, but they talked too much about charts and data. They didn't seem to notice how beautiful and dangerous this place really was. She walked deeper into the forest, letting her feet guide her while her mind wandered. Then she heard it. A low, rumbling growl that made the ground beneath her tremble. It wasn't like anything she'd heard before. Not quite animal, not quite machine. It was raw power wrapped in sound. Lily froze, her heart pounding in her chest. Slowly, she turned toward the source of the noise. Through the thick underbrush, she saw movement. Something large was thrashing violently near a cluster of rocks. As she crept closer, trying to stay hidden behind the trees, she realized what, or rather who, it was. A dragon predator. She'd only seen pictures of them in the briefing materials, but those images didn't do justice to the real thing. This creature was massive, easily 3 times the size of a car. Its scales shimmered in shades of black and deep green, blending almost perfectly with the shadows around it. Long claws dug into the dirt as its tail lashed out wildly. And its wings, huge leathery wings folded tightly against its body, looked strong enough to carry it anywhere. But there was something wrong. The dragon wasn't moving gracefully like it should have been. Instead, it twisted and bucked, shaking its head furiously. One of its golden eyes was squeezed shut, and its sharp teeth snapped together in frustration. Lily watched carefully, trying to figure out what was causing so much pain. Then she saw it. A long, jagged thorn stuck deep inside one of its nostrils. Her first instinct was to run. Dragons were predators, after all. Even injured ones could kill her without thinking twice. But something stopped her. Maybe it was the way the creature's breathing came in ragged gasps, or the desperate look in its remaining open eye. Whatever it was, Lily couldn't leave it like this. She reached for the small knife strapped to her utility belt and took a hesitant step forward. "Hey," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's okay." The dragon froze mid-thrash, its golden eye locking onto hers. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then slowly the creature lowered its head, still watching her warily. Lily swallowed hard and forced herself to take another step closer. "I'm not going to hurt you," she murmured, more to reassure herself than the dragon. She kept talking as she approached, using soft tones to calm the beast. When she was close enough to touch it, she paused, waiting to see if it would attack. But the dragon stayed still, its heavy breaths fogging the air between them. Taking a deep breath, Lily raised her hand and gently touched its scaly snout. The skin was warm and rough like sandpaper. The dragon flinched but didn't pull away. Encouraged, Lily shifted her focus to the thorn lodged in its nostril. It was sharp and pointed, probably from one of the spiky bushes scattered throughout the forest. Carefully, she gripped the base of the thorn with her fingers and gave it a firm tug. The dragon roared in pain, rearing back suddenly. Lily stumbled, backward, falling onto the ground. Her heart raced as she waited for the inevitable attack, but instead, the dragon settled down again, its golden eye fixed on her once more. "I'm sorry," she whispered, getting back to her feet. "I'll be careful." This time, she used the knife to cut away some of the surrounding tissue, making it easier to remove the thorn. Sweat dripped down her forehead as she worked, her hands trembling slightly. Finally, with one last effort, she pulled the thorn free. Blood trickled from the dragon's nostril, staining the ground beneath it, But the creature seemed to relax instantly, its tense muscles loosening as it exhaled deeply. Lily stepped back, wiping her hands on her pants. She wasn't sure what to expect next. Would the dragon thank her? Or would it turn on her now that it was no longer in pain? To her surprise, the creature simply stared at her for a long moment, its golden eyes filled with an intensity that made her feel small and insignificant. Then, without warning, it spread its massive wings and launched itself into the sky. Lily shielded her face from the gust of wind created by the dragon's takeoff. When she looked up again, it was already disappearing over the treetops, leaving her alone in the quiet forest. Her legs felt weak, and her hands were still shaking. What had just happened? Had she really helped a dragon predator? And why did it feel like something inside her had changed forever? For a few minutes she stood there staring at the spot where the dragon had been. Then, snapping out of her daze, she glanced at the bloody thorn in her hand. She dropped it quickly, wiping her palm on her shirt. Whatever this meant, she knew one thing for certain. Her life on this planet would never be the same again. When Lily finally returned to the base camp, her mind was racing. The image of the dragon predator wouldn't leave her thoughts. She kept replaying the moment when its golden eyes locked onto hers, the way it had let her touch it, and how it had flown away without attacking. It didn't make sense. Dragons were supposed to be ruthless killers, not creatures capable of showing trust. But that's exactly what had happened. Her teammates greeted her with questions as soon as she stepped into the clearing where they had set up their temporary camp. "Where were you?" asked Daniel Harper, the leader of the expedition. His voice was firm but calm, though his eyes narrowed slightly as he studied her dirt-streaked clothes and the scratches on her arms. "I just went for a walk," Lily replied quickly, avoiding his gaze. She wasn't ready to tell anyone about the dragon, not yet. Not until she understood what it all meant herself. Grace Miller, the biologist on the team, noticed the hesitation in Lily's voice. Grace was older than most of the others, with kind eyes and a gentle demeanor. She often spent hours observing the local wildlife, jotting notes in her worn notebook. "Did you see anything interesting out there?" she asked, tilting her head. Curiously, Lily hesitated, then shook her head. "Just trees and plants, nothing special." Grace smiled faintly but didn't press further. Instead, she turned her attention back to the group gathered around the fire. They were discussing recent sightings of dragon predators near some of the settlements established by earlier expeditions. Reports claimed the dragons had attacked structures and even injured people. Fear hung thick in the air, and voices rose as the conversation grew heated. "We can't keep ignoring this," said Ryan Scott, one of the engineers. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with a no-nonsense attitude that sometimes came across as harsh. "These things are dangerous. If we don't deal with them now, they'll become an even bigger problem later." Daniel nodded thoughtfully. "Ryan's right. We need to protect ourselves, and anyone else who might come here in the future. These creatures are too unpredictable." Grace frowned, crossing her arms over her chest. "That doesn't mean we should exterminate them. We haven't given them a chance. Maybe there's a way to communicate or coexist peacefully." The argument continued late into the night, with everyone taking sides. Some agreed with Ryan, insisting that the dragons posed a threat that couldn't be ignored. Others sided with Grace, believing that killing them would only escalate the conflict. Lily stayed quiet, listening intently but keeping her distance. She wanted to defend the dragon she'd met earlier, to explain that it wasn't like the others. But how could she? No one would believe her. Eventually, the discussion died down and the team dispersed to their tents. Lily lay awake for hours, staring at the fabric ceiling of her sleeping quarters. Her mind kept drifting back to the forest and the dragon predator. What if it came looking for her? Would it attack the camp? Or worse, would someone from the team find it first? The next morning, Lily woke early, unable to shake the restless feeling gnawing at her. She decided to take a short walk outside the camp perimeter to clear her head. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting soft orange light over the alien landscape. Dew clung to the leaves of nearby plants, sparkling like tiny jewels. For a brief moment, everything felt peaceful. As she wandered deeper into the woods, she heard a familiar sound, the heavy flapping of wings slicing through the air. Her heart skipped a beat as she turned around, half expecting to see the dragon, predator again. Sure enough, there it was, perched on a fallen tree trunk several yards away. Its massive form blocked out part of the sky, and its golden eyes gleamed in the morning light. Lily froze, unsure of what to do. Should she run? Call for help? But the dragon made no move to attack. Instead, it lowered its head slightly, almost as if bowing. Tentatively, she took a step forward. Then another. When she was close enough to reach out and touch it, she stopped. "Hi," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You came back." The dragon tilted its head, studying her carefully. There was no sign of aggression in its posture, only curiosity. Emboldened, Lily extended her hand slowly, letting it hover near the tip of the dragon's snout. After a moment, the creature leaned forward, brushing its scaly skin against her palm. A shiver ran down her spine at the contact. It was warm and rough, unlike anything she'd ever felt before. For a while, they simply stood there, human and dragon, connected by something neither fully understood. Eventually, Lily sat down on the ground and the dragon settled beside her, folding its wings neatly against its body. She reached out again, running her fingers along the ridges of its scales. To her surprise, the dragon closed its eyes, seemingly enjoying the attention. They stayed like that for what felt like hours, though time seemed to lose meaning in the dragon's presence. When the sun climbed higher in the sky, Lily reluctantly got to her feet. "I have to go back," she said, softly, knowing the dragon wouldn't understand her words. Still, it watched her closely as she backed away, never breaking eye contact. Later that day, Lily found it difficult to focus on her tasks. Her mind kept wandering back to the dragon. She wondered if it had followed her home, if it was watching her even now, hidden among the trees. The thought sent a thrill through her, though she couldn't explain why. That evening, as the team gathered around the fire for dinner, Ryan suddenly spoke up. "Hey, did anyone notice Lily acting weird today?" All eyes turned to her, and Lily felt her cheeks flush. "What do you mean?" she asked, trying to sound casual. Ryan shrugged. "You've been distracted, and I saw you heading into the woods last night. Where were you going?" Lily hesitated, searching for an excuse. Before she could respond, Daniel chimed in. "It's not important right now. Let's focus on finishing our work here." Though his tone was neutral, Lily caught the flicker of suspicion in his expression. After dinner, she slipped away from the group, retreating to the edge of the camp. As she stared into the darkening forest, she heard the unmistakable sound of wings cutting through the air. Turning quickly, she saw the dragon emerge from the shadows, landing gracefully a few feet away. It looked at her expectantly, as if waiting for her to join it. Without thinking, Lily stepped closer. "You're going to get me in trouble," she muttered under her breath, though she couldn't suppress the smile tugging at her lips. The dragon responded with a low rumble that sounded almost like a purr. In that moment, she realized something incredible. This creature trusted her, and somehow she trusted it too. But as she glanced back toward the camp, she knew their secret meetings couldn't last forever. Sooner or later, someone would find out, and when they did, everything would change. Over the next few days, Lily's life became a careful balancing act. During the day, she did her best to blend in with the rest of the team, helping with tasks like gathering samples and setting up equipment. But at night, when the camp grew quiet and everyone else was asleep, she would slip away into the forest to meet the dragon predator. Each time, it waited for her in the same spot, a clearing surrounded by tall trees where moonlight filtered through the leaves, creating patterns. On the ground, the dragon seemed different now that it wasn't in pain. It moved with grace and purpose, its massive wings folding neatly against its body as it walked. Its golden eyes sparkled with intelligence, and Lily couldn't help but feel that it understood her in ways no one else ever had. She started calling. It's Storm, inspired by the way its presence felt like a force of nature, powerful, untamed, and awe-inspiring. Storm began bringing her gifts. At first they were small things, shiny stones, strange fruits he'd plucked from distant trees, and even pieces of twisted metal he must have scavenged from abandoned ruins. Lily didn't know why he did this, but she accepted the offerings, gratefully, placing them in a pile near the edge of the clearing. To her, they weren't just objects. They were proof that their bond was growing stronger every day. As they spent more time together, Lily noticed how intelligent Storm truly was. He watched her closely, mimicking some of her movements and responding to her gestures. One evening, she decided to try teaching him simple commands. She pointed at a nearby rock and said, "Go there." Storm tilted his head, studying her for a moment before walking over to the rock and sitting down beside it. Lily clapped her hands excitedly, and Storm let out a low rumble that sounded almost like laughter. Encouraged by his response, she continued, experimenting. She used hand signals to guide him, waving her arm to tell him to move left or right, raising her palm to signal him to stop. Storm caught on quickly, following her instructions with surprising accuracy. In return, he taught her things too. He showed her which plants were safe to eat and which ones could be dangerous. He led her to hidden streams where the water was cool and clear, and he even demonstrated how to climb steep slopes without slipping. Together, they explored parts of the planet that no human had ever seen before. Despite the joy these meetings brought her, Lily couldn't ignore the growing tension within the camp. The debate about the dragon predators had only intensified, dividing the team further. Ryan Scott remained adamant that the creatures were a threat that needed to be eliminated. "They're wild animals," he argued during one heated discussion. "You can't reason with something like that." Grace Miller disagreed, pointing out that they still didn't fully understand the dragon's behavior. "We've only been here for a short time," she said. "How can we judge an entire species based on a few incidents? There has to be another way." Daniel Harper, as always, tried to keep the peace. "Both sides have valid points," he admitted. "But we need to make a decision soon. If these dragons are as dangerous as Ryan says, we can't afford to wait until someone gets hurt." Lily listened to these arguments silently, her heart sinking each time someone mentioned killing the dragons. She wanted to speak up, to tell them about Storm and everything he had shown her, but she knew they wouldn't believe her. To them, dragons were monsters, not sentient beings capable of forming bonds with humans. So she kept quiet, keeping her secret locked away. One evening, as Lily prepared to leave the camp for another meeting with Storm, she noticed Ryan watching her suspiciously. He had been acting strange lately, often glancing at her when he thought she wasn't looking. She tried to brush it off, telling herself that she was imagining things, but deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that he was onto her. When she reached the clearing, Storm was already waiting for her. He greeted her with a soft nudge of his snout, and Lily smiled despite her unease. "Hey, big guy," she whispered, running her fingers along the ridges of his scales. "I missed you." For a while, they simply enjoyed each other's company, sitting quietly under the stars. But then, Storm suddenly tensed, his ears pricking up as if he'd heard something. Lily followed his gaze, scanning the shadows beyond the clearing. At first, she saw nothing. Then, she spotted movement. A figure, stepping cautiously into the light. It was Ryan. He froze when he saw them, his eyes widening in shock. For a moment, no one moved. Then, Ryan stumbled backward, tripping over a root and falling onto the ground. What is this?" he stammered, staring at Storm in horror. Lily stepped forward instinctively, positioning herself between Ryan and the dragon. "Ryan, wait," she pleaded. "He's not going to hurt you." But Ryan wasn't listening. He scrambled to his feet and bolted back toward the camp, disappearing into the darkness. Lily turned to Storm, her heart pounding. "We're in trouble," she murmured, knowing exactly what would happen next. Back at the camp, chaos erupted. Ryan burst into the main tent where most of the team was gathered, shouting wildly about what he'd seen. "She's been meeting a dragon," he exclaimed, pointing accusingly at Lily. A real live dragon predator. It's huge. It's right out there in the woods. At first, no one believed him. Are you sure you weren't dreaming? Daniel asked skeptically, frowning at Ryan's frantic expression. I'm telling the truth, Ryan insisted. Ask her yourself. All eyes turned to Lily, who stood frozen in the doorway. She knew there was no point in denying it. Taking a deep breath, she stepped inside. Okay, fine, she said, her voice steady, despite the fear bubbling inside her. It's true, I've been meeting a dragon predator. The room fell silent. Grace was the first to speak, her tone gentle but curious. Why didn't you tell us? Lily hesitated, unsure of how much to reveal. Because I knew you wouldn't understand. He's not like the others. He's smart, and he trusts me. He saved my life once, and now I'm trying to help him. Ryan scoffed. Help him? Are you serious? That thing could kill us all in seconds. Not if we don't provoke it. Lily shot back, her voice rising. You don't know what you're talking about. You've never even seen one up close. The argument escalated quickly, with voices overlapping and tempers flaring. Finally, Daniel raised his hand, demanding silence. Enough, he barked. When everyone quieted down, he turned to Lily. If what you're saying is true, then this changes everything. We need to see it for ourselves. No, Lily protested immediately. You'll scare him off. Or worse, you'll hurt him. Daniel shook his head. We can't just ignore this, Lily. This isn't about you anymore, it's about the mission. If these dragons are as intelligent as you claim, then we need to study them. But if they're a threat, we need to neutralize them. Lily felt tears welling up in her eyes, but she blinked them away. She knew Daniel was right, at least in his own way. The team wouldn't let this go, and neither would Ryan. There was only one thing she could do. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Lily packed a small bag with essentials: food, water, a flashlight, and her utility knife. She wrote a quick note explaining her decision and left it on her cot. Then she slipped out of the camp and ran toward the clearing where Storm was waiting. When she arrived, Storm sensed her distress immediately. He lowered his head, nudging her gently. We have to go, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. They're coming for you, and I won't let them hurt you. For a moment, Storm didn't move. Then he knelt down slightly, offering her his back. Lily hesitated, staring at the massive wings stretched out behind him. She had never ridden a dragon before, but she trusted Storm completely. Taking a deep breath, she climbed onto his back, gripping the ridges of his scales tightly. As soon as she was settled, Storm spread his wings and launched himself into the sky. The wind rushed past Lily's face as they soared higher and higher, leaving the camp and her old life far behind. Below them, the forest stretched endlessly, glowing faintly under the light of the alien moons. For the first time in days, Lily felt a sense of peace. Whatever happened next, she knew one thing for certain. Storm would protect her, just as she had protected him. The world blurred beneath them as Storm flew higher, his powerful wings slicing through the air with effortless grace. Lily clung to his back, her fingers gripping the ridges of his scales as tightly as she could. The wind whipped at her face, cold and sharp, but she didn't care. For the first time since arriving on this alien planet, she felt truly free. The weight of secrets, arguments, and fear had lifted, at least for now. As they soared above the treetops, Lily caught glimpses of landscapes she'd never seen before. There were vast lakes shimmering like mirrors under the moonlight, their surfaces rippling gently as if whispering secrets to the stars. Jagged mountain ranges rose in the distance, their peaks dusted with glowing moss that pulsed faintly, casting an otherworldly glow across the horizon. And then there were the ruins. Ancient structures half buried in the earth, their shapes twisted and strange, as though they had been sculpted by time itself rather than human hands. Storm seemed to know exactly where he was going. He didn't hesitate or falter, his golden eyes scanning the ground below with purpose. Every so often he would let out a low rumble, almost like he was talking to himself, or maybe to her. Lily wished she could understand what he meant, but for now she was content to trust him completely. Eventually, Storm began to descend, gliding smoothly toward a secluded valley nestled between two towering cliffs. The area was unlike anything Lily had ever seen. Strange plants grew here, their leaves glowing softly in shades of blue and green. A river wound its way through the center of the valley, its water sparkling as if filled with tiny crystals. In the middle of it all stood a massive tree, its trunk wider than any building Lily had ever seen. Its branches stretched high into the sky, adorned with luminous flowers that lit up the surrounding darkness. Storm landed gently near the base of the tree, folding his wings neatly against his body. Lily slid off his back, her legs trembling slightly from the long flight. She stumbled forward a few steps, catching her breath as she took in the beauty of the place. "Is this your home?" she asked softly, looking up at Storm. He responded with another low rumble, nudging her gently with his snout. It wasn't much of an answer, but Lily understood. This was a safe place, a sanctuary far away from the dangers of the camp and the rest of the team. For now, at least, they were safe. Back at the camp, chaos reigned. When Daniel Harper and the others woke the next morning to find Lily gone, panic set in quickly. Her note explained everything. She had left to protect the dragon predator, unwilling to let anyone harm it. But her words did little to ease the tension among the group. "She's lost her mind," Ryan Scott muttered angrily, pacing back and forth in front of the fire. "Running off with a killer? What is she thinking?" Grace Miller, however, remained calm. She held the note in her hands, reading it over and over again. "She's not crazy," Grace said firmly. "Lily believes in this creature. Maybe we should try to see things from her perspective." Daniel sighed heavily, rubbing his temples. "It doesn't matter what she believes. She's out there alone with something that could kill her, or worse, lead it straight back to us. We need to find her before it's too late." The team split into groups, each tasked with searching different parts of the forest. They carried weapons, not just for protection but also to capture the dragon if necessary. Ryan insisted on bringing tranquilizer guns, claiming they needed to neutralize the threat without causing unnecessary bloodshed. Grace argued against it, but her protests fell on deaf ears. For hours they searched tirelessly, calling out Lily's name and scanning the skies for any sign of movement. But the forest was vast and unforgiving, swallowing their voices whole. By nightfall, they returned to the camp empty-handed, frustration mounting with every passing minute. Meanwhile, Lily and Storm explored the hidden valley together. During the day, Storm showed her how to navigate the terrain, pointing out safe paths and warning her about areas to avoid. He led her to streams where the water tasted sweeter than anything she'd ever drunk, and he introduced her to fruits that burst with flavor when she bit into them. At night, they slept beneath the glowing tree, its soft light keeping the darkness at bay. But Lily couldn't shake the feeling that their time together was running out. Sooner or later, the team would find them. Or worse, they would send someone else to track them down. She tried not to think about it too much, focusing instead on the bond she shared with Storm. Each day, their connection grew stronger. She taught him new commands, using simple words and gestures to communicate. Storm responded eagerly, mimicking her movements and even attempting to mimic the sounds she made. One evening, as they sat beside the river watching the water flow past, Lily decided to test just how intelligent Storm really was. She picked up a smooth stone from the bank and held it out to him. "Catch," she said, tossing it gently into the air. To her amazement, Storm opened his mouth and caught the stone, mid-flight letting it drop onto the ground in front of him. He looked at her expectantly, waiting for more. Laughing, Lily threw another stone and then another until they were both laughing. Or at least, Storm was making noises that sounded suspiciously like laughter. It was moments like these that reminded Lily why she had risked everything to protect him. He wasn't just a dragon predator. He was a friend, a companion, and perhaps even a kindred spirit. Together they were discovering a world neither of them fully understood, and finding solace in each other along the way. Despite the joy they found in the valley, Danger loomed closer with each passing day. One afternoon, while exploring a cluster of ruins near the edge of the valley, Lily noticed something unusual. Scorch marks marred the walls of one of the structures, and the ground nearby was littered with broken equipment, human equipment. Her stomach sank as she realized what it meant. Someone had been here recently. Storm, she whispered urgently, tugging at his wing to get his attention. We're not alone. Storm growled softly, his golden eyes narrowing as he scanned the area. He moved closer to Lily, positioning himself protectively between her and the ruins. Together, they waited silently, listening for any sign of movement. After several tense minutes, a voice broke the silence. Lily? Is that you? Lily froze, recognizing the voice instantly. It was Grace Miller. Slowly, she stepped out from behind Storm, raising her hands to show she meant no harm. Grace, she called out cautiously. It's me. Grace emerged. From the shadows, her face pale but relieved. Behind her stood Daniel Harper and two other members of the team. They looked exhausted, their clothes torn and dirty from days of searching, but their expressions hardened when they saw Storm. You shouldn't have come here, Lily said, stepping closer to the dragon. He won't hurt you, I promise. Ryan scoffed, raising his tranquilizer gun. That thing is a monster. You can't seriously expect us to believe it's harmless. It's not harmless, Lily admitted, her voice steady despite the fear bubbling inside her. But it's smart. Smarter than any of you realize. If you give him a chance, he'll prove it to you. Daniel hesitated, glancing between Lily and Storm. How do we know we can trust it? You don't, Lily replied simply. But you can trust me. I've spent days with him. He's protected me, helped me survive out here. He's not the enemy. Grace stepped forward, lowering her weapon slightly. Let's hear her out, she suggested, addressing the group. If what she says is true, then this changes everything. The standoff continued for several long moments, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Finally, Daniel nodded reluctantly. Fine, he said. Show us. Lily turned to Storm, placing a hand on his snout. It's okay, she murmured. They're not going to hurt you. Storm rumbled softly, his golden eyes flickering, between Lily and the group. Then slowly he lowered his head, bowing slightly as if acknowledging their presence. The gesture stunned everyone into silence. He's amazing, Grace whispered, her voice filled with awe. Ryan still looked skeptical, but even he couldn't deny the intelligence in Storm's gaze. For the first time, Lily allowed herself to hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could find a way to coexist after all. The standoff between the team and Storm lasted longer than anyone expected. Lily stood firmly beside the dragon, her hand resting on his scaly snout, as if to remind everyone that he was not a threat. The air was thick with tension, but slowly, the hostility began to fade. Grace Miller took a cautious step forward, lowering her weapon completely. Her eyes were wide with wonder as she studied Storm's massive form. He's incredible, Grace murmured, her voice soft but filled with admiration. Look at him, he's not attacking, he's letting us see him. Daniel Harper hesitated, his grip tightening on his tranquilizer gun before finally loosening. He glanced at Ryan Scott, who still looked ready to shoot at any moment. Stand. Down, Daniel ordered sharply. We're not here to fight. Ryan glared at him but reluctantly lowered his weapon. This is a mistake, he muttered under his breath. Mark my words, we'll regret this. Lily ignored Ryan's grumbling, focusing instead on Storm. She could feel the steady rhythm of his breathing beneath her palm, a comforting reminder of his calm demeanor. Turning to face the group, she spoke firmly. You don't have to be afraid of him, she said. He's intelligent, smarter than we give him credit for. He understands us, even if we can't fully understand him yet. To prove her point, Lily stepped away from Storm and picked up a small rock from the ground. Holding it out in front of her, she made eye contact with the dragon. Catch, she said clearly, tossing the rock into the air. Storm reacted instantly, opening his mouth and catching the rock mid-flight. He dropped it gently onto the ground, then tilted his head as if waiting for more. A collective gasp rippled through the group. Even Ryan looked momentarily stunned, though he quickly masked his surprise with a scowl. "See?" Lily pressed, her voice rising with excitement. "He listens, he learns. He's not just some wild animal. He's a thinking being." Grace nodded thoughtfully, her notebook already in hand as she scribbled notes furiously. "This is groundbreaking," she said. "If these creatures are capable of forming bonds with humans, if they can communicate and cooperate, it changes everything we thought we knew about them." Daniel crossed his arms, his expression unreadable. "Even if that's true, we still need to think about safety. We can't ignore the reports of attacks on settlements. How do we know other dragons will act like this one?" Lily hesitated, knowing he had a valid point. Not all dragons were like Storm, she understood that. But she also believed that their aggressive behavior stemmed from fear or misunderstanding. If humans approached them with respect instead of hostility, maybe things could change. "I don't have all the answers," Lily admitted. "But I know Storm isn't dangerous unless provoked. Maybe the others aren't either. What if we tried talking to them instead of fighting them? What if we gave them a chance?" Her words hung in the air, heavy with possibility. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, Daniel sighed deeply, running a hand through his hair. "All right," he said finally. "We'll give it a shot. But if anything goes wrong, if anyone gets hurt, it's on you, Lily." She nodded, accepting the weight of his words without hesitation. "I understand." Over the next few days, the team worked together to establish a fragile truce with Storm. Grace spent hours observing him, documenting his behavior and reactions to different stimuli. She marveled at how quickly he adapted to new commands and how carefully he interacted with the group. Even Ryan, though reluctant at first, began to soften slightly after witnessing Storm's gentleness firsthand. During this time, Lily continued to act as a bridge between the humans and the dragon. She translated his movements and sounds, explaining what she thought he meant based on their previous interactions. Slowly but surely, the team started to see Storm not as a monster, but as a sentient creature capable of trust and cooperation. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Grace approached Lily while Storm rested nearby. "Do you think there are others like him?" she asked quietly. "Other dragons who might be willing to work with us?" Lily considered the question for a moment before nodding. "I think so," she replied. "Storm seems special, but I don't believe he's unique. Dragons are guardians of this planet. They protect it because it's their home. If we show them that we're not here to destroy it, maybe they'll stop seeing us as enemies." Grace smiled faintly, her eyes lighting up with determination. "Then we need to start somewhere, and I think Storm is the perfect ambassador." The following morning, the team packed up their gear and prepared to return to the main camp. They decided to bring Storm with them, not as a prisoner, but as a symbol of hope. It was a risky move, but they agreed that showing the rest of the expedition team that peaceful coexistence was possible might prevent future conflicts. As they made their way back through the forest, Storm walked calmly beside Lily, his massive presence both intimidating and reassuring. When they reached the camp, the reaction was immediate. Crew members stopped what they were doing, staring in awe, and in some cases fear, at the sight of the dragon predator standing so close to humans. Daniel called everyone together for a meeting explaining what had happened over the past few days. He emphasized the importance of respecting Storm and treating him as an ally rather than a threat. Grace shared her observations, highlighting the intelligence and adaptability of the species. By the end of the discussion, many of the crew members seemed cautiously optimistic. Still, not everyone was convinced. Some whispered nervously about the dangers of keeping such a powerful creature so close. Others openly questioned whether trusting Storm would lead to disaster. But Lily refused to let their doubts shake her resolve. She knew Storm would prove himself in time. That night, as the camp settled into an uneasy quiet, Lily sat by the fire, with Storm lying nearby. His golden eyes reflected the flames glowing softly in the darkness. She leaned against his side, feeling the warmth radiating from his body. For the first time since arriving on this alien planet, she felt truly hopeful. "You've done so much already," she whispered, stroking the ridges of his scales. "But there's still so much more to do. Together we can show everyone that we don't have to fight. We can live alongside each other." Storm rumbled softly in response, nudging her gently with his snout. Though he couldn't speak human words, his actions conveyed everything she needed to know. He trusted her completely, just as she trusted him. As the fire crackled and sparks drifted upward into the night sky, Lily allowed herself to dream of a brighter future. One where humans and dragons worked together to protect the planet they both called home. One where fear gave way to understanding, and enemies became allies. And one where she and Storm would always stand side by side, united by a bond stronger than words. For now, the road ahead was uncertain. But with Storm by her side, Lily knew they could face whatever challenges came their way. Together. Over the next few weeks, life at the camp changed in ways no one had expected. Storm became a constant presence, his massive form casting long shadows across the clearing as he moved gracefully among the humans. At first, many of the crew members kept their distance, eyeing him warily whenever he came too close. But as days passed and Storm showed no signs of aggression, their fear began to fade. Lily stayed by Storm's side almost constantly, acting as both his protector and interpreter. She taught him new commands using simple words and gestures that even the most skeptical members of the team could understand. In return, Storm demonstrated his intelligence in ways that left everyone amazed. He learned to follow basic instructions, like fetching objects or moving obstacles, and even started mimicking certain sounds, earning laughter and applause from those who watched. Grace Miller spent hours observing Storm, documenting every detail in her notebook. Her enthusiasm was infectious, and soon others joined her in studying the dragon predator. They discovered that Storm responded differently to various tones of voice and body language, proving that he was far more perceptive than anyone had imagined. Grace often joked that working with Storm felt less like studying an animal, and more like collaborating with a partner. Even Ryan Scott, once the loudest opponent of keeping Storm around, began to soften. One evening, after watching Storm help carry supplies for a new shelter, Ryan muttered under his breath, "Maybe this wasn't such a bad idea after all." Though he didn't say it loudly, Lily caught the comment and smiled to herself. Progress was slow, but it was happening. As trust grew between the humans and Storm, so did their understanding of the planet itself. With Storm's guidance, the team explored areas they'd never dared to venture into before. He led them to hidden springs, where the water tasted sweeter than anything they'd found near the camp. He showed them edible plants and warned them away from poisonous ones. And when storms rolled in, bringing fierce winds and torrential rain, Storm acted as a shield, curling his wings around the group to keep them safe. Through these experiences, the team began to see the dragons not as mindless predators but as guardians of the planet. They realized that the attacks on settlements likely stemmed from fear or territorial instincts rather than malice. This newfound perspective sparked discussions about how to approach other dragon predators, not with weapons, but with patience and respect. Daniel Harper organized meetings to brainstorm strategies for peaceful coexistence. Grace suggested setting up observation posts near known dragon habitats, allowing the team to study their behavior without disturbing them. Lily proposed using Storm as a mediator, hoping that his presence might calm other dragons and encourage them to interact with humans. The ideas were ambitious, but the team agreed to try. One morning, Daniel announced that they would attempt to contact another dragon predator. The decision was met with mixed reactions. Some were excited while others were nervous. Lily volunteered immediately, insisting that she and Storm should lead the effort. "He'll know what to do," she said confidently. "We can show the others that we're not here to harm them." The chosen location was a rocky plateau overlooking a dense forest where dragon sightings had been reported. The team traveled there cautiously, carrying minimal equipment to avoid appearing threatening. When they arrived, Lily climbed onto Storm's back, gripping his scales tightly as he launched himself into the sky. Below, the rest of the group watched anxiously, their eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of movement. It didn't take long to find what they were looking for. A second dragon predator emerged from the trees, its sleek black scales glistening in the sunlight. It roared loudly, spreading its wings as if preparing to attack. Storm responded with a deep rumble, circling above the newcomer slowly. Lily leaned forward, speaking softly to Storm. "It's okay," she whispered. "Let me talk to it." Storm descended until they were level with the other dragon. Lily raised her hands in a gesture of peace, calling out gently, "We're not here to hurt you. We just want to understand." For a moment, the two dragons locked eyes, their golden gazes intense and unyielding. Then, to everyone's surprise, the second dragon lowered its head slightly, a subtle nod of acknowledgement. Storm rumbled again, this time in a tone that sounded almost friendly. The second dragon hesitated, then relaxed its posture, folding, its wings against its body. Encouraged by the response, Lily urged Storm to land nearby. Once on the ground, she stepped forward carefully, keeping her movements slow and deliberate. The second dragon watched her closely but made no move to attack. After a few tense moments, it stretched out its neck, sniffing the air curiously. Lily extended her hand, palm open, offering a silent invitation. When the second dragon brushed its snout against her hand, the entire team let out a collective breath they hadn't realized they were holding. It was a small gesture, but it carried immense significance. For the first time, humans and dragon predators had connected without violence or fear. Back at the camp, the success of the encounter sparked a wave of optimism. The team worked tirelessly to build on the progress they'd made, focusing on finding ways to communicate with other dragons. Grace developed a system of signals and sounds based on Storm's responses, which the team practiced daily. Lily continued to act as a bridge, teaching Storm new commands that could be used to guide interactions with other dragons. Word of their efforts spread quickly, reaching the leaders of earlier expeditions who had abandoned the planet due to conflicts with the dragon predators. Some expressed interest in returning to assist with the mission, while others sent supplies and resources to support the team's work. Slowly but surely, the dream of peaceful coexistence began to feel within reach. Months later, the transformation was undeniable. The camp had become a hub of collaboration between humans and dragons, with Storm serving as a symbol of hope and unity. Other dragons began visiting regularly, drawn by the promise of safety and mutual respect. Together, humans and dragons worked to preserve the planet's delicate ecosystem, combining their strengths to tackle challenges neither species could face alone. Lily stood at the center of it all, her bond with Storm stronger than ever. As she watched the sun set over the alien landscape, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. What had started as a single act of kindness, removing a thorn from a dragon's nostrils, had blossomed into something far greater. "Thank you," she whispered, resting her hand on Storm's snout, "for trusting me, for showing everyone that we don't have to be afraid of each other." Storm rumbled softly, his golden eyes glowing warmly in the fading light. Together they turned toward the horizon, ready to face whatever lay ahead. Side by side, human and dragon, they had forged a new path, one built on trust, understanding, and the shared desire to protect the world they both called home.